Good morning. I am Eric Runge, Vice President of Iowa Western Student Government, and I would like to welcome you to the Legislator Forum. I am pleased to be your moderator for this great opportunity for our college. Iowa Western has worked hard to increase the number of students that actively participate in elections through voting and voicing their beliefs for a better tomorrow. Iowa Western has a rich history of political involvement, and we are an important part of the electorate in Iowa. I would like to take this moment to thank all of you for your commitment to civic engagement and Iowa Western. I would also like to thank the legislators for all their hard work and support of community colleges. We appreciate you taking the time to participate in the forum. Lastly, I would like to recognize Iowa Western's Media Studies program for recording today's event and broadcasting it live on CB-TV Channel 17. Because of their support, we are streaming this event live at each of our Iowa Western centers, including Shelby County, Cass County, Page Fremont County, and the Clarinda campus. The legislative forum will end promptly at 10 a.m., which will allow you to make it to your next class. Now let's go over the rules of the forum. Each legislator represents the voters in our Iowa Western district and will have approximately 3 minutes for each question. I will be keeping the time. If a legislator goes over 3 minutes, I will say time and move on to the next legislator. Let's start today's forum. Legislators, please introduce yourself and share your outlook for the next legislative session. Start on the near end here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Welcome, everybody. It's going to be a very interesting next session of the legislature. Iowa's a place where more often than not, by a long shot, about 90% of the time over the last 50 years, the legislature and the executive branch have had divided government where Democrats are in control of some parts of it and Republicans are in control of other parts of it. So it's an interesting kind of microcosm of what goes on in our country where we have a society that's somewhat polarized and divided. So the next session of the legislature is no different from that. Democrats control the Iowa Senate, Republicans control the Iowa House and the governor's office. And we struggle through tough budget decisions. Top of the list, I think, probably for everybody at this table, and not just today because of the forum, but every day, top of the list in terms of funding is probably community colleges. Very, very important. 2/3 of the jobs that will be created in our society over the next 10 years need more than a high school diploma, but less than a 4-year degree. And the place that provides those skills and that training is community colleges in the state of Iowa. So next session of the legislature, while it will have its partisan differences back and forth, I think there will be a strong consensus to do more for community colleges. I think we were all somewhat disappointed in the governor's vetoes of additional funding for community colleges and K-12 education and the Regents institutions in the state of Iowa. So I think as we approach next session, it's a little bit unclear what the forecast will be because there are some differences inside your political institutions, and there are some fair arguments to be had about what the state can afford. I can tell you my #1 priority is to make sure that community colleges have the resources necessary to be nimble and strategic in terms of training a skilled workforce, whether it's refrigerated chilled water cooling systems for Google, or vet techs for animal agriculture, or nurses' aides for nursing homes in the state of Iowa. Community colleges have to be the place that have enough resources to provide the training to match people's skills to the jobs that are available out there. So I'm excited about next session, but also I come in with a bit of trepidation because we were, even though the House and Senate, the Republican House and the Democratic Senate were able to find agreement last year, we were not able to get the governor to agree to that. I think I'm about out of time, right?
Thank you. I'm Tom Shipley. I'm the state senator for District 11, which is starts just on the other side of the road out here and goes all the way to the other side of Creston. So while Iowa Western technically is not in my district, I have a special place for Iowa Western because I'm a graduate of Iowa Western a long time ago out of the Clarinda campus, but nonetheless, I have a deep love for community colleges. My daughter was graduated from Southwestern Community College. I know a lot of young people that go there. I don't have anything different to add from what Senator Gronstal has said. I think, but being a product of community colleges, I also think it's a key part of helping students with their costs for education. We desperately need people in programs for work job skills, but if it's an avenue to go on to the next step of a four-year institution, this is certainly an excellent way to help reduce the cost without reducing the quality of it. I think it's also a big part of providing these dual enrollment courses for many of you were probably involved in dual enrollment in high school to be able to take courses then, which there again helps reduce the cost without reducing quality. I think it's the community college system in Iowa is one that the whole state can and should be proud of for filling the role. And we're not telling you what you want to hear. I think almost everybody that I ever speak with is in agreement that it's a vital part of the education in Iowa. And especially I think it's helpful to help reduce the cost so students don't have such a high burden of debt when they come out. I think it's certainly an excellent opportunity for that. But as Senator Gronstal said, many of the skills you learn, and I look up here and I'm assuming you guys are an auto mechanics program and so forth. The things that are happening out in rural, I'm a rural Iowan and I'm never going to be ashamed to admit that, but we really need people out there to fill some of these spots as some of these business people retire. We're finding voids for people to fill those, and you people play a big role in that. As long as you remember the one main thing you have to do, and that's show up every day. I don't know if they have a class here on that, but the main thing at work, the main complaint I hear from employers is that people don't necessarily understand they got to be there every day because there is work to be done. That's why you're hired. But I think places like this are an excellent place to instill what needs to be done other than the skills of setting the timing on a vehicle, doing what nurses' aides do, what I see people here in food services, those sort of things. Those are the things, but I think there's also a very big part that community colleges can play in helping people understand what they need to do in all aspects of being successful in the career. So keep up the good work. There's jobs out there for you, and some of them are going to pay pretty darn well if you're willing to do what it takes to get them.
Go ahead. Thanks, Tom. I'm Charlie McConkey. I'm the state representative for West End Council, Pleasant Carter Lake, District 15. I want to thank you for being here today, and it's an honor to be able to come and speak. I think the question was, what do I think the next session was going to dominate the next session? I'm pretty sure it's going to be two things. It's going to be education. We're going to spend a lot of time on that. When the session starts, the Republican House will be 333 days late on setting a levy of funding for K through 12 education. And after chronic underfunding, I think our public school systems deserve no less than a 4% allowable growth. That's one of the things I'm going to be fighting for. We also need to work harder for education to be affordable for all Iowa families. And another thing, beginning this fall and through the next session, we'll be taking a close look and watching the governor's plan to privatize the Medicaid management program. Iowa's has $4.2 billion in a Medicaid program. Since there was 4 providers that was selected less than a month ago, and many Iowans and legislators are skeptical about the rush to privatization of Medicaid. We got concerns over poor health care, management, and higher costs. And the recent reports show that they found out the 4 organizations selected has been created at numerous violations, and including fraud. And then there's been heavy fines leveled against them in other states. So that's going to be one of 2 things: is education, I think, will dominate, is one of my concerns, and the Medicaid, privatizing the Medicaid program. That's 2 things I think that's going to be dominating this next session. Thank you.
Good morning. It's great to see you all here. Thank you to Iowa Western and to the Iowa Western student body for hosting this event. We really appreciate your being here. I'm State Representative Mary Ann Hanusa, and I represent House District 16, which is roughly the eastern and southern portions of Council Bluffs, and I'm proud to say that Iowa Western is part of that district. I've been a legislator for 5 years. I was elected in 2010, and when I'm not in the legislature, we have a part-time legislature, which means that we're only there about half of the year. Some people say that's good, so we can't do any more damage. And then the other part of the year, I'm actually a school administrative manager for the Council Bluffs Community Schools. A number of my colleagues have kind of touched on the financial outlook for the next session, and I just thought I'd take a little bit different tack. For the House, the outlook for next year is going to be one of new leadership. For the first time in a very long time, we've had almost a complete turnover in the leadership in the Iowa House due to the fact that the Speaker of the House has chosen to step down from that role in preparation for his not running again next year. So for the first time in Iowa history, we will have a woman take the role as Speaker of the House. And she is currently the majority leader of the Iowa House. She was the first woman to assume that role in Iowa history. Her father was the Speaker of the House, and this is the first time, I believe, in national history that you've had a father-child Speaker of the House combination. So that's kind of exciting. As my colleagues have touched on, the next year is looking to be a tight budget year. We don't yet know what the numbers are going to be. And we know that Medicaid and other health-related services continue to take a large portion of the state budget. But having said that, I think it is absolutely goes without saying that the funding for community colleges and the effort to make that as high as possible will be a priority for all legislators, regardless of party. And I know we'll get into that a little bit more, so I thought that one more thing as far as the outlook for me personally and for my colleagues in the House and the Senate is a bill that I worked a lot on last year that I hope to I will continue to work on and hope to see its passage and its eventual becoming law. But I'm the chair of the House Economic Growth Committee, and we had a bill last year that would give tax credits to Iowa businesses that would produce renewable chemicals from biomass feedstock. And what that means is that it's kind of a second level of where Iowa's the leader in ethanol production, and this would be kind of a second level of production from that process to create chemicals that can be used in plastics and cosmetics. Excuse me. And while this is an economic development bill because it will create lots and lots of jobs for our state, it also puts Iowa on the map because this is something that is not being universally done in other states. It makes us the first state to really have a concentrated program in this way. But it also is an education bill because through the creation of jobs, through the research and development, our students and universities and colleges in this state can work on the new research and the development that will go into the production of these renewable chemicals. So it's a bill that has widespread support, and you'll be hearing more about it, and I'm really looking forward to working with my colleagues again on that bill, and I look forward to its passage. So thank you again for having us here.
Well, thank you. One of the things I have a problem with right now this past summer is my voice. And can you hear me in the back? Good. If you don't hear me, let me know. I'll do everything I can to speak up. I'm Representative Jack Drake, and I represent House District 21. And Senator Shipley is my senator, and that includes the very east end of Pottawatomie County, most of Cass County, all of Adams and Union County. And so we have a long, narrow district. One of the things that we've got a challenge, in my opinion, is we've got money coming in. I've farmed all my life, and I do know that you don't spend more money than you take in very long, because there comes paydays. And one of the things that hit us hard last year is the federal government has been making Iowa take over more and more of Medicaid. And they've made us take over about 185 million. Their idea is Iowa has been doing well financially. They can afford to pay more. And so I'm a strong supporter of community college. We've got some children and spouses and grandchildren that have graduated out of community college. And so I know the importance of it. I would have liked to have taken some courses from community college. As I say, I farm. The problem is I needed those schedules to be from about December 1st until April 1st. And because I took a couple of courses, and let me tell you, it was tough trying to farm and be on the tractor all day long and then have homework. So I quit taking them, but I really enjoyed them. One of the challenges I also see in the community colleges, there's a big demand out there for skilled employees. And I'm seeing ads in the paper that paper's just full of ads. But we'll just take like a mechanic or any of the other ones. The technology changes so fast that the community college has to pick up quite a bit of equipment that they don't know what it's going to cost them. So to make sure that you're educated. So I will also tell you one thing. I had 2 grandsons that graduated out of Iowa Central Community College. And the reason is Iowa Central offered wrestling. And they were wrestlers, so. But we're going to try and do all we can. And so, as I say, the money, the Revenue Estimating Conference is going to be meeting on October 13th and start talking about the money coming in. But as I say, I strongly believe that we should not spend more money than we take in. So we're trying to do all we can. I've always tried to do that, and I look forward to working with you and your questions yet.
Good morning. My name is David Seek. I represent Iowa House District 23, which basically starts down there by the power plant just south of Council Bluffs at the Mills County border, goes clear down to Missouri along the I-29 corridor, then over to Red Oak, Iowa, which I get 2/3 of Montgomery County. A little bit about myself. I am a former student at Iowa Western Community College. I hold my and this was a long time ago, like Shipley said, long time ago. I hold my real estate license today because of coursework I took here, and I've learned a lot along the way from Iowa Western Community College. And I'm a true believer in what community colleges can do and how they can accomplish it. I'd like to thank the Iowa Western student government, the students for being here, the faculty for holding this event. I'm not the youngest legislator in Iowa, but I'm the least seasoned veteran of the Iowa legislature. I was put in a specialist election when Joni Ernst became our U.S. Senator to represent this House spot. So I got about 2/3 of the legislative session. I missed the first 5 or 6 weeks, so that's how I got here, and I'm also a farmer like Jack and like Tom. So I'm very glad to be here today. This is the first TV thing I've ever done, and I'll give you my take, and it's, I probably don't have the experience that all these people have at the table, but hopefully I have the passion to help everybody understand, because I used to sit out there as you guys are today. If you look at the outlook for the coming year, the state agencies are working on their budgets right now. By mid-November, they have to have their budgets decided for the next year. At this point in time, there's approximately, by the Legislative Services Agency, which is a nonpartisan group that tells us legislators what's going on in our state government, there's $200 million of spending increases built into 2017's physical budgets, which we're going to be working on. And those increases, a lot of them, like Jack said, are from the Medicaid and Medicare programs. The Medicaid alone is going to cost Iowa an extra $100 million according to the legislative services, and then there's another $100 million on top of that of additional money that's needed in this next session just to keep the government funding with the programs we've already promised the people of Iowa. So if you look at that, that's $200 extra million that we have to come up with and to fund what we're already doing. And that's if the federal government accepts Governor Branstad's healthcare initiative to go to a managed healthcare system. If they do not accept that, there's another $102 million that we're going to have to find to also fund that. So you can see that, going into this year, we've got some additional growth in the government that's being passed down to us, a lot like what they said from the federal government, because they think we're doing well. So if you look at that as we move ahead, those are concerns I see for this next legislative session. And if we can, and our economy has given us mixed signals right now. The ag sector, which I'm part of, I'm a farmer, the ag sector is struggling. It's actually gone into the negative. And so I see, commodity prices going down. Some of the big companies that, John Deere's and stuff are laying off employees, which is a concern of mine. But yet our revenue's staying pretty steady. We're not quite in all of 2015, we're not quite where they say we should be. We're a little bit under it. So I see this tight budget situation that they're talking about coming to us in this legislative session. So as we move ahead, I think this year we'll have some of that, as Senator Gronstal said, some of that back and forth to make sure that we're spending the money according to what the people need, and that we look out for the people of Iowa and do the best we can to make sure that we keep everything whole as we can, and we only make cuts where we can see waste and things that we really don't need.
Our first question will be, what is the forecast and desire for future of community college funding? Start on the far end.
Again, thank you. I didn't know I get to double back, but thanks a lot. As you know, I'm a strong supporter of community college. I've gone here. I believe in what it does. I truly believe that it's the economic driving force for Iowa's economy, and I think that's been said here today. The House Republicans, which I am one, have been long-time supporters of community college. They've shown our commitment through our efforts the last several years as the majority party in the House. Additionally, we've created a number of skilled work initiative programs between the tune of $15 and $20 million. And last year, we submitted our commitment to those programs by creating the Skilled Workers Initiative Fund, which houses all skilled worker programs and dedicated a steady stream of funding to the tune of about $66 million. And the legislature, again, approved this program and the funding stream, so that's good. We know that, in this economic environment, which is kind of, we really have low unemployment and pretty steady economy, but that it's kind of teetering, and some people are losing their jobs and they have to find new careers, or their jobs are changing, that the community colleges play a huge role in that effort. And they seem to be very, very good at tooling up and coming out with new programs to meet the ever-changing demands of the workforce. And it's truly appreciated, and our strong community college system is just showing that that's very important. I mean, I plan to continue to work collaboratively with the community college and work with that. Now, that being said, since 2012, the General Assembly's added $42 million in funding to community colleges. So we've tried to make sure, and I wasn't there when this happened, but they've tried to make sure that we take care of it and that we know what's truly driving our economy, that these are good jobs. A lot of them stay in Iowa and they build businesses. All you guys may have that opportunity after you graduate from here. The only problem we're seeing is that though we've given $42 million extra dollars to the community college, we have 15,000 less students since 2012, which I'm not saying it's you guys' fault. You're all here. I'm saying that maybe us as legislators and the administrations need to make sure that we get down into the high school level and make sure that the kids that are graduating look at two-year colleges, look at community colleges, and use that as their stepping stone, because a lot of them, a community college and the jobs that are coming out of these community colleges are very, very high-paying jobs that are needed. I mean, I've built Been fortunate to work with groups of farmers to build ethanol and biodiesel plants in Iowa. And a lot of times the community college is tooled up to provide jobs for these industries that we're building, and they can do it faster than our large universities. So I see that, we've been doing our share, from what I can tell, to help the community college. I plan on continuing to do that, but we need the community colleges to keep their enrollment levels up and to work hard down in the high school levels to make sure that the students understand how important what you guys are doing here today is. Thank you.
Well, I find it very important for the community colleges to be functional and doing everything they can to provide people or new workers. I might use this example a little bit. Our youngest son was a graduate of Iowa Western. He majored in mechanics. And when he came home, and then he was working for a mechanic, an implement dealer, he had a chance to run a farm. And so we done some things together. We bought a combine together, excuse me. But what I thought was interesting with the combine, I'd kind of watched through the years that, generally speaking, about half of the bill is labor, and the other half is parts. So I told him, I said, I'll pay the labor, or the full parts bill, you pay the labor bill, or just you do the work. And that's really worked out well. We're out in the field. If some little thing happens, he knows exactly what to do and which way to do it. And so I've had a little firsthand experience of that. And we have other kids that are doing a lot of different things too. And so it's very important. I hope we can find the money to give you more money. Because I do know that you have not had a surplus. Because I like to see more of your students going to community colleges. And it's a challenge out there, but we're going to have, in my opinion, we're going to have a challenge for money this year. Because I know the price of grain has went down so very strongly. And implement dealers are laying off workers. And so whether we can find the money, which I hope we can, but I also, as I mentioned earlier, I do not believe we should spend more money than we take on, but I want to get as many of you graduated as possible. Thank you.
Well, one thing that will not change as the new session begins is the long-standing support for community colleges that every member of the House and the Senate, Republican, Democrat, all of us up here, regardless of what party we are, has for the community colleges. And I know that the highest level of funding for community colleges and to continue its good work and its program will be pursued, and it should be. Why? Because community colleges are perfectly situated in a way that our universities are not, and some of our other institutions of higher learning are not, to almost on a dime be able to respond to the needs of a community and create programs that can provide the education that then help you find the jobs that you need to find. A perfect example of that here at Iowa Western is the connection between Iowa Western and what used to be called Ellison Technologies. It's now ACETA, and the robotic technology, the combination of which, or rather the collaboration of which between Iowa Western and that private company who needed students and needed workers who were trained in the area of that robotic technology. Iowa Western worked with them, saw that, hey, you know what, we can provide that kind of training, and once we provide that, then we've got a ready market for students to go and take those jobs. I actually had Dan Kenny, the president of Iowa Western, and the president or the vice president of ACETA Technologies come and present to my economic growth committee because I really thought it was such an exciting collaboration of a business, private business, and a community college, really showing how those two can work together to create educational programs that will directly go right to a job. Iowa has an outstanding system of community colleges, which truly are the envy of other states. And legislators who have never even been to Iowa Western they know about Iowa Western. They talk to me. They know about its programs. They know about how innovative and progressive you have been in providing all manner of programs. Iowa Western is really a remarkable institution, and I'm not just saying that because we are here. As I said, I hear this from many legislators across the state. And it is a true gem among the 15 community colleges that Iowa has. The community colleges provide, as you know, a quality education, usually in a more affordable manner, and in order so that you can learn specific skills. Sometimes those are technical skills, sometimes they're nursing, whatever, that you need to further your careers. 6 or 7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago in Iowa, there were some severe budget cuts that left the funding for community colleges and left funding across the state really decimated in many areas. And so over the last years, and I've only been there the last 5 years, but over those years, we have increased the funding for community colleges every year and tried to increase as much as possible for the reasons that I said. You are here in the communities, you see the needs, you are able to address those needs so that it's not just a matter of, okay, I've got a degree or I've got this education, this is practical education that you can take and go out and find a job. And you are uniquely situated to do that, as I said, in a way that some of our other institutions of higher learning can't do because they have a different mission. And we know that in Iowa we have a skilled worker shortage. We have had this for several years, and it's a nationwide problem. It's not just a problem to Iowa. But we have worked to create a number of skilled worker training programs, trying to, and Representative Seek mentioned some of that, but we have tried to create as many programs as possible that really address this skilled worker shortage and this middle skill shortage that we have in Iowa so that everybody can be productive and everyone can have a job and contribute to the community as much as possible. So I know that as we go into the session, the numbers are still somewhat uncertain, but community colleges are always a priority for all of us. Thank you.
Well, one of my concerns is the status quo budget community colleges received last year. It was a $201.3 million budget, or status quo budget, which was greater than the $8 million cut the governor proposed. The legislature also passed a one-time spending bill of $2.5 million for community colleges, and that was vetoed by the governor. You know, in the upcoming legislation session, we'll be working on the fiscal year 2017 budget. The Revenue Estimating Conference, which is the REC, will be convening next month. So it's too early to tell what revenues are going to be available to make any decisions. But I want to assure you, community colleges will receive enough to provide education for the Iowa students that will prepare them for tomorrow's workforce and challenges, but yet be affordable for all Iowans. You know, the national Iowa community colleges nationally, Iowa community colleges have above high average tuition and fee cost. Last week, the tuition fees came in for the Iowa community colleges increase, and duly, mainly the technical fees. Iowa Western had the largest tuition fee increase percentage for all Iowa community colleges. You know, again, we want to make community colleges affordable for all Iowans, for you to receive the job training needed to find better jobs, but we also need to provide the resources and training so they can receive this training on updated equipment that the employers accept and need. So again, I want to assure you that I'll do everything I can to make sure the community colleges receive adequate funding.
Well, you get down to the end of the table and there's really not much to repeat because every one of us are very interested in making sure that community colleges are adequately funded and yet dealing with the real world also, as it's been alluded to. It's going to be interesting to see in 2 weeks, and the Revenue Estimating Committee is probably something that many of you have never heard of, but I would watch your media a little bit to see what they say. I think they meet the 13th of October, so they're gathering information now. What the Revenue Estimating Committee does is estimate how much money the state of Iowa will have for a certain period of time. That's not the final answer. They meet again in December and then meet again in March, correct? So that, it's always a moving target, but it is vitally important because there are issues, as has been referred to, as spending more than what comes in. And I think in Iowa, we have done a pretty solid job of taking care of business in this state. I just returned from a visit out with my brother in Illinois, and they were laughing. They have ads on the TV for lottery, except there's no money to pay a lottery winner. So I don't think we ever want to be in the position of things like that when we won't, because we're Iowans and we don't do it that way. There is a great demand for a lot of different things that we have, or there will be, in areas that we haven't even imagined yet. And that's where I think it's really vital for the community colleges to be in place to react to those things. Regents institutions, I'm a graduate of them, and they are a lumbering bureaucracy at times that it just takes eons for them to get to respond to something. But community colleges are more of a local-based entity that can do what needs to be done. For example, last winter we were talking to the rural electric cooperatives, and as we mentioned, earlier about people retiring, they've got a real need out there for people that know how to deal with electricity on those lines. And you think it's not important to you? Well, Mid-American, I suggest, will probably be much in the same boat. We need people that are trained to do that, so when you hit the switch, the lights come on. And we cannot take that for granted. But we've got to have people trained to do that so they can do it in a safe manner and an efficient manner. And that's where I believe that, as we said, there are things out there, with technology advancing the way it is, there are things out there that we can't even begin to imagine that are going to be needed training, even for you when you're 40 years old. And that seems like a long time away for many of you, but trust me, it's tomorrow. And we need to have these kind of organizations around to be able to make those changes, so you'll be able to keep your skills upgraded too.
I'm almost not sure where to start. Over the last 5 years in Iowa, we have made significant progress. The question is, what is your forecast and desire? Let me start with my desire. My desire is that we get community college funding to the same level as we provide for private colleges. This is on a per pupil basis. So on a per pupil basis, you can applaud, but inside the legislature, if you come up to visit and you're in the balcony, you're not supposed to applaud when we debate on the floor of the legislature. We certainly don't mind it here, so thank you for that. So here's the situation, and it's an interesting mechanism. So when you talk about per pupil funding, if there are fewer students, the per pupil funding has gone up, right? The per pupil funding goes up when there's fewer students. When the economy's weak, a lot of people go back to college, go back to community colleges, get some training programs, and so more students come in. So when the economy's weak, our per pupil spending per each individual actually goes down, even if we keep the same amount of money. So here's the situation. Right now, at Regents institutions, we provide approximately $12,000 per pupil. At K through 12 education, we provide approximately $6,500 per pupil. At private colleges, we provide approximately, I think it's $3,400. And for community colleges, it's about $2,000. But remember, those numbers fluctuate based on if it's a year when there's a whole bunch of students coming into community colleges, or very few new students or even declining enrollments. So that number is somewhat fungible. It changes over time depending on how many people are enrolled. Is that fungible is a word, yes. So my desire is to get to the same level, that 3,400 per pupil spending, which we're significantly below that right now. But I can tell you over the last 5 years, we have made progress on that in 4 of those 5 years. We did not make progress this year. This year was, this last legislative session was essentially a treading water session on that funding. And even though we treaded water, per pupil spending's probably up a few bucks because enrollments have declined a bit. So that's my desire, to get to that level and to continue to make progress on it. I'd like to do that all in 1 year, okay? But we're not going to do that. That's not reality. It took 30 years, actually 50 years to get to the level we're at on community colleges. This is the 50th anniversary of community colleges this particular year, 2015. So that's my desire. My forecast for next session is we will make progress on that. We will provide more resources, and we will get more for community colleges than we do for the other 3. That would be my goal during this next session of the legislature, to make sure that we're making progress on that and that we value you at least as much as we value kids that go to private colleges in the state of Iowa. So thanks all for being here and being part of this process. I think that's kind of the next question. I'll stop there. And
The next question is, how can students be more involved in the legislative and political process? Right here.
okay, I'll start again. Now, what can you do? Well, what you can do is participate in the political process. Like it or not, you're not, most of you are not here because you want to be involved in government. There may be a few of you, but you're here because you want a career. You want a career in auto mechanics or climbing wind turbines and repairing and maintaining wind turbines, or any of a whole host of things in medicine. They have a great programs here at this college for people that are interested in medicine. All kinds of things, and you may want to do this and then go on to higher education. This may be your step going to Regents institutions or other places. You are all part of that, and in your head, most of you probably aren't highly political, right? Unfortunately, we live in a democratic society, and if you care about things that government does, and most of what state government does, 60% of it, is K through 12 education, is all of education. That's most of what our state does, and it's in fact most of what every state does. So if you care about education, if you care about tuitions, if you care about the number of programs, if you care about those things, unfortunately you need to participate in the political process. And sometimes it's hard to sort out Democrats and Republicans and who's right and who's wrong on all of that. But you've got to spend a little time paying attention to that and finding those legislators that you think are responsive to the issues that motivate you. And you have an incredible opportunity right now, an outsized opportunity compared to everybody else in the United States. Your voice is louder when it comes to choosing the next president of the United States than anybody else in the country, because we have the precinct caucuses. They're on February 1st. That's a Monday. So next year, as that rolls around, there will be presidential candidates coming into Iowa. There'll be some dropping out of the race. You've already heard of a couple of those on the other side of the aisle, and who knows what you'll see on the Democratic side of the aisle. But there's people there coming around this state, and that's one way to get involved. And it's also an opportunity to be able to tell your grandkids that you met the President of the United States before he was president. So you have a wonderful opportunity, lots of opportunities. Pay attention to the newspaper. Presidential candidates come to Iowa on a regular basis, come to Council Bluffs on a regular basis. But then once you do that, that gets you kind of involved in kind of the national picture, but then that all blows away. After February 1st, those guys aren't coming back to Iowa anytime soon because they're on to the rest of the primary schedule. And at that time, you can start thinking about, do you want to participate in political campaigns in Iowa? And the state legislative races, there are 50 senators, there are 100 House members. We each represent the senators represent about 60,000 people. House members represent about 30,000 people. My districts, Council Bluffs and Carter Lake, you've heard the other folks describe their districts. So wherever you're from, you have a state representative and a state senator. And in most cases, you'll find that the incumbent probably has somebody on the other side of the aisle running against him. So it's kind of your responsibility to figure out who it makes the most sense to have represent you in Des Moines, and you can go help them in campaigns. Every one of us needs help. There's a great opportunity to do anything from knocking on doors to phone calls.
I'm sorry, it's your time.
And I'm out of time, so.
Well, every time I get in front of a group, the first question, and I did this, and I'm not saying that, I did this yesterday in Atlantic with a group of about 25 or 30 people. My first question, and I'm not going to ask anybody to raise their hand because I don't want to embarrass anybody, although I probably should. Can you name me who, number one, your state representative is, and who is your state senator? Can you do that? You better be able to. It is not and if you're in Iowa, you got two. If you're in Nebraska, you're lucky. You only have to remember one. So you're pretty fortunate in that respect. But it is important that you know who these people are. And surprisingly enough, when I was running a year ago, the thing I tell people that I am most discouraged about, I am not discouraged about the process and the capital or the people, because I work with a lot of really good people. That's the one thing I tell people, the biggest plus I've discovered is working with a lot of really good people, and it doesn't make any difference which party they're in. What discourages me is the way people have become disengaged from what's going on, from the standpoint of not even knowing who their representatives are. People would say they're going to vote for me. Well, that's good, but you're going to have to move. You aren't even in my district. And the biggest thing almost a year ago, because we're getting close to the end of October, but people would come up to me and ask, well, now, are you running for state senate or U.S. Senate? They had just dropped how many millions of dollars on a U.S. Senate campaign, and you're asking me if I'm running for U.S. Senate? Come now. That as Senator Gronstall said, it's about paying attention and reading things. You don't, and I wouldn't necessarily say you need to read everything that the strong Republicans or the strong Democrats put out, because there probably will be some bias in that. But reading and listening to a lot of different things to develop, how do you develop an opinion if you don't know who the people are? I had an interesting conversation with a good friend who's got his master's degree and so forth, and he asked me about this up-and-coming entertainer. Her name is Rachel Holder. He says, well, do you know anything about her? I don't. And I was just joking. Didn't have anything to do with politics. Well, maybe she's related to Eric Holder. And it was supposed to be a joke because the young lady, they are two different races, and it's supposed to be somewhat of a joke. He didn't have any idea who I was talking about, Eric Holder, the Attorney General of the United States. And that could be said of a lot of people. Now, that was scary. Think about that for a moment. People that are educated, that should know, aren't even paying attention. But he has opinions about things, but I have no idea how he develops those without paying attention. Senator Gronstall said it best: pay attention. Ask questions. Every one of you have legislators that have forums next year. After the session starts, I'll be at some place every Saturday to meet with people so they can come and ask us questions.
I'm sorry, your time is up.
You can be there too.
Well, as you see, you're getting a good education, the difference between the senators and the House representatives. We won't take up that much time. So anyway, how to get involved. Iowa, you have first a caucus in the nation. That's a unique opportunity and a responsibility. We need to get involved. I suggest go listen to your presidential candidates. Come up with some questions. Go to events. Always get involved. Pick a local candidate. Pick a candidate of your choice. Do what you can to get them elected. Go to these events and have good questions for them. See where they stand on the issues. I always suggest we got local candidates here, and every one of us here should have, I believe, have a Facebook, Twitter, website. We got email addresses, and we're more than happy and willing. We want to hear from all of you. What's your concerns? So I suggest like you say, you pick a candidate and do what you can, whether it's door knocking, phone banking, holding a fundraiser. Just get involved, and you'll be surprised how enjoyable it can be, and you'll be really surprised how frustrating it is. But just get involved. This big democratic experiment, it won't work unless we all get involved. And so, well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I want to assure everybody that I'm also a product of Iowa Western. I graduated here. My wife graduated here. All my kids went here. I've got grandkids that have gone here, and grandkids are going here. So I understand how important Iowa Western is to this community and how important community colleges is to the state of Iowa. And we should be proud of our system. And I'll do everything I can to get the adequate funding needed we need to produce a skilled workforce, a highly skilled workforce, in order for us to compete nationally and globally. So I'm getting off the subject here, and I promised you I wasn't going to filibuster like the rest of the senators do, but thank you for having me.
Well, I know this doesn't apply to anyone sitting here, but let's say, for example, that there were someone in this audience who is sitting here thinking, I could be doing a lot of other things than sitting here listening to a bunch of politicians. The problem is politicians, not the problem really, but the fact is that politicians oftentimes become elected office holders, and then they are the ones who make decisions about issues that are really important to you and affect you in many ways, not just education, but in all manner of ways. A lot of people pay a lot of attention to what the President of the United States does or what their member of Congress does, which makes sense because there's a lot of attention paid to those people. And yet, oftentimes, the people who are elected more on a local level, whether it's your state representative, state senator, your local city council, county supervisors, are oftentimes making the decisions that impact your day-to-day lives much more than, let's say, a member of Congress or even the President of the United States. So it is important, as the senators, both senators said, to pay attention and try to be involved. And I know that's hard because you're a student, you're probably working another job, you maybe have children to care for, parents to care for. There's a lot on everybody's plate, and it's hard to pay attention to everything, and it's sometimes even hard to catch the snippets of the news. But it is important because those decisions are being made that do affect your lives, whether it's taxes or healthcare reform or education funding or whatever it might be. In Iowa, especially on the national level, it is extremely easy to get involved because, as they say, it's hard to swing a cat in this state without running into a presidential candidate of either party. And if you, every campaign, no matter if it's for the lowest level campaign you can imagine or the highest office in the land, will never turn down a volunteer. If you want to volunteer and get involved, you will not be turned down. You will be welcomed with open arms. And so to address the political side of it, it's really very easy. If you want to grab a friend, go volunteer, you will be cheered and you will be welcomed and put put to use to helping that person try to gain elective office. As far as staying in touch with us from on the legislative side, we all have legislative emails. You can contact us that way. You can contact us by phone. You can come to the Capitol. How many of you have been to the Iowa State Capitol? Can I just see a quick show of hands? Okay, so we got some work to do. We need to get the rest of you there. But we would love to visit with you at the Capitol when we're in session. You can also online view what's bills, view committee agendas, see what's going on just via line. When we're in session and we're on the floor debating bills, you can listen to us on the computer, both House and Senate, audio and video. So there are ways to stay connected, to be involved. And I know it's tough because time is short and you've got a lot on your plates, but it is important. And don't be afraid to ask us questions. If you want to know something, if you want to know how to get involved, just give us a call. We are happy to talk to you. Send us an email. Midnight, doesn't matter. We'd love to respond. So again, you're here. You're already involved. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being such a great audience, and let us know how we can help you, pursue your goals and be a great part of this community. Thanks so much.
Well, I find it interesting that I get a lot of questions. How's things in Washington, D.C.? Well, I don't know. It's been about 4 or 5 years since I've been there. But people think that they know I'm a legislator, but they don't know that I'm just a state legislator. One of the things that my goal is to have more people working in Iowa. I would just like to see that happen. I do everything I can to make a good business climate, and I try to make myself available. I try to be out with people, and I've had a lot of people come up and ask me, can I talk with you? Well, certainly you can talk with me. So I do everything I can to make myself available to the public. And don't hesitate to ask us, and sometimes you keep leaning on us and you'd be surprised how that may have an effect on us. So with that, I do want to thank you for all the things that you've done. I hope you have good successes in the future. And with that, good luck.
Well, I'm going to speak this from my heart. I don't need any cards for this. 35 plus years ago, I would have been sitting in this audience if this beautiful building was here, and I'd have been much like a lot of you in this room. I would be trying to create my career, figure out what I was going to do with my life, and get a path. And that's where I would have been 35 years ago. And the one question, or probably the one thing I learned here, we're supposed to ask this, how can you get involved? The first thing I want to pose to you is why you should get involved. Now, I took an economics course, and I think it was Iowa Western. It was either Iowa Western or Iowa State. I took an economics course, 101 or 103 or whatever the number was back then. And the one thing I learned in that economics course was never underestimate the power of the government to make a good thing bad and a bad thing good. And I've held that my entire life because it holds really true in what's going to happen to you and what has happened to me. Now, if you'd asked me 35 years ago, would I ever be at this table to be a legislator, I would have said, heck no. But I got involved in the process. I did exactly what this question asks you, is how you can become more involved. And the reason I became more involved, because it affected my agricultural business, it affected my family, and it affected my life. And if you look at that daily, what we do is we make laws. And, it's not only at the state level, it's at the city level. You have your city councils, your mayors. I've worked with lots of them. You have your county government, your boards of supervisors. They all make decisions. You have your state legislatures, which now I'm one of them, and you have your federal legislators. I've worked with groups across the state, Farm Bureau, Iowa Corn Growers, National Corn Growers, U.S. Grains Council, and I've worked very, very hard to make a difference for the people out here in Iowa and my constituents that I represent. And the reason I did that was because if you don't get involved, we're going to make decisions, and we don't always make the right decisions. Sometimes we try to do the best we had. A lot of government that I've worked with through the years, they're trying to do the best they can for you, but sometimes we don't have all the input we need. So if you don't get involved and put that input out there and tell us what's going on in your lives, why this impacts you, we're going to make a decision that isn't always going to be right. Most of the time, we're going to get it about 80%, and that's what I've seen in my career, that we get it about, the politicians get it pretty close to right most of the time, but that 20 or 30% is going to kill the business that someday you're going to create or the job you're going to have and make your job absolutely obsolete. So if you don't get involved in the process, I'm afraid that down the road, and it seems to be happening more and more all the time, that decisions are made that completely turn your life upside down or your business because you weren't involved in the process. You need to get involved in your trade groups. You need to know what's going on at the legislators. At your local level, they're making rules that can affect you. They're having regulations come down from the federal government that are going to change your life, and you need to make sure that your input is heard. If you work with your trade organizations of whatever career you decide, those organizations will work really, really hard to represent you and to give you that voice you need, and plus you have your own voice. And that voice also will tell you what's important and what matters in your life, to your family, to your job, to your career, and hopefully to your ancestors. So all I can say is I'm here today because I got involved. So thank you.
That's all the time we have today. Please give a round of applause for each of the legislators. On behalf of the students of Iowa Western, we thank you for your continued support of Iowa's community colleges. If you would like to watch this event again, tune into CBTV Channel 17 in the upcoming weeks to view the replay. Thank you for attending the 2015 Legislative Forum at Iowa Western.